Hello, everyone. My name is Loi, and it's good to be back to Seoul. I was here last year, I think, and good. Really enjoyed, the weather and the cherry blossoms. Cool. Yeah, I think most of you know me as founder of Kyber, one of the earliest decentralized, trading protocol, right, on Ethereum. I started it back in 2017, and I run it for 5 years and stepped out 3 years ago in 2022. I think Kyber is still doing well. We still process something like 150 to 200 million US dollars index volume daily, right? But for me, I think over the last 3 years, I spent a lot of time angel investing, looking at where the space is moving, looking at what are the problems that we as the space haven't solved it, right? And I think I stumbled into Bitcoin again, right? And for a few good reasons. So I think one is basically if you look into the BTC dominance chart, right? I think it's the up only chart over time. Within every cycle, there will be fluctuation. People move in and out of Bitcoin to get more yield on, say, Ethereum, Solana, or other chains, right? But I think end of the day, people still, jump back into Bitcoin as a safe asset, right? To have more a stable kind of growth, and and I think. How many of you have used Bitcoin recently? In the last, month? In the last 30 days? Any of you? Okay, this is the exact reason why we are building Optimex, right? Because I think eventually, Bitcoin need to rely on, transaction fees, right? To secure the entire network. Because I think the block reward is basically happen every 4 years. And I think after 4 or 8 years, I think we probably have less than a Bitcoin, right, to subsidize the miners to secure the Bitcoin network. And I think basically the entire security of Bitcoin, the largest cryptocurrency on earth, will need to rely on all the activities happening on the Bitcoin network itself. And we don't have enough of that at the moment. I think none of you showed your hand, so that's not too surprising. And I think it's really aligned with the metric that we are seeing, right? I think if you look into the DEX volume on, say, Solana and EVM, we see around 10 to 12% of the DEX volume compared to the centralized exchanges volume, right? But on Bitcoin, I think we have around 0.1% of the volume. On DEX, right? Compared to what is happening on the centralized platform. And this is really an untapped kind of market. And this is where the opportunity is, right? For anyone to build anything on Bitcoin at the moment. And I think the reason why the volume and the activities is so bad is because I think Bitcoin is a slow chain, right? Basically, every time you want to do anything, it's going to take you 10 minutes. And if you are if you get used to with what's happening on Solana and Ethereum, right? It's within seconds. But I think the bigger point is I think a lot of the services or a lot of the existing protocols on that support Bitcoin natively, it's quite, I would say, it's still very inefficient, right? I think this is some of the trade that we see on some of the existing platform, some of the existing protocol. Users are basically paying 10% for the swap fees, right? From Bitcoin to, I think this is to USDT. And for some of the higher value trade, this is 360K trade. They basically took 15 hours to settle, right? It's not usable for most of the retails. And basically, if you look into lending for Bitcoin, everything happens in the centralized environment, right? With crypto exchanges or some of the lenders out there. So it's not good. And I think recently we have been seeing a lot of activities happening in Bitcoin Layer 2, Bitcoin LSD, and staking. Babylon just launched. But I think a lot of them basically didn't solve the hard problem, right? I think a lot of the Bitcoin LSD or Bitcoin Layer 2, they basically just take your Bitcoin and just put it into some like custody or some multi-sig, right? And they issue a wrap version of the Bitcoin, and which is not good. I mean, we basically did that in 2018, 2019 with wrap BTC, right? So back in 2018, 2019, we basically talked to BitGo and a few other DeFi projects, and we basically issues wrap BTC, the 10 billion kind of TVL wrap Bitcoin token. And I think basically a lot of these Bitcoin LSD still rely on centralized custodian, and that's really not acceptable to this. I mean, it's already 2025, right? So let's just work in a non-custodial kind of like environment. So that's why we spent the last 7 months now to build Optimex, and the goal is to really build several native DeFi use cases to support Bitcoin, right? So we have the swap use case. You can basically swap from BTC to ETH to Solana or BNB, right? Or any Ethereum or Solana asset, right? You can also do lending. Basically, you can imagine that you can collateralize your BTC natively on Bitcoin, and you can borrow stablecoin or ETH or Solana, right? Or BNB on whatever chain. And I think it really has to be non-custodial, right? Like we don't want to rely on some centralized custody. We don't want to rely on some third party or some big multi-sig, right, to safekeep of the asset for the users. And I think a few other things, we really want to make it usable for people, right? Like that means we want to have deep liquidity, right? So you don't want to do something like, you wait for 10 hours in order to settle the trade or some position, right? Non-custody is the first principle for us, right? Without the non-custody property, it's not DeFi anymore. UI, UX, I think is quite important. I think we are not 2017 anymore, so I think any DeFi project should really take care of their UI, UX and make sure that the users can really use it, right? So this is the high-level architecture that we have for the swap use case. Basically, we use a lot of tools that is available on DeFi, on Ethereum, and on Solana, right? And we try to adopt them into Bitcoin and really create some great kind of experience for the users. On the liquidity side, we basically use the RFQ model, or you may heard the intent models, right? It's basically the same thing. So we have market makers that are basically ready on one side and just be ready to quote and to settle the trade with the users. And on the Bitcoin side, I think it's a lot more tricky, right? Because I think the problem with Bitcoin is once the user send the transaction, there is always that time frame, that 10 minutes, right? That they can always double spend the transaction and withdraw from the trade, withdraw from the activities. So in order to do that, we basically create what we call the BTC native vault, which runs natively on Bitcoin, right? And it uses all the standard Bitcoin script. And this BTC vault is basically a multi-sig between the users and the settlement committee, right? It's a 2-of-2 multi-sig, so the users will always need to sign. The users always need to approve for whatever activities happen in this vault. So who is the settlement committee? We'll talk about it later, but there are basically a bunch of nodes that are working together to settle the trade, the activities for the users. Right, so this is the basic flow of a trade, right? The users, they will create this BTC vault by just sending the transaction on Bitcoin, right, with their BTC. And once the vault is created, it's very simple. Basically, the users will talk to the market makers and find the best rate for their BTC to ETH, for example, right? Once the users is happy with the rate, they will just commit to the rate by just basically signing the multi-sig transaction, right? To say, I will send my BTC to the market maker at this rate in the condition that the market makers have to send my ETH to my ETH address, right? And because it's a 2-of-2 multi-sig, so the Bitcoin is still there. It needs the settlement committee signatures, right? So now the settlement committee will just wait for the payment from the market maker to the users on Ethereum side, which is step 4, right? And once it's done, once the payment to the users is done, then basically the settlement committee will just finish the whole transaction by completing the multi-sig transfer, right? By just signing his part of their part of the signatures to send out the BTC from the vault. And that will be the step 6 that will conclude the entire experience. So we have one more thing that makes the whole thing a lot better, right? So we have the concept that is called the trading channel. Basically, in the previous swap, every transaction, every trade will need one on-chain transaction to settle, right? And with Bitcoin, it's really terrible because, you might have to wait for 10 minutes or even more, right, in order to wait for the trade to be confirmed. But we basically create the concept called trading channel, which utilize Lightning Network in Bitcoin. And the idea here is that the users will just create the trading channel with Optimex, right? And Optimex will have its own trading channel with the market makers. And now, a few good things will happen. One, we have the instant trade confirmation that will happen off-chain, right? So the user requests for a trade, get the rate, confirm the trade, and it will be instantly confirmed, right? And they can do that several times, right? They can do 10, 20, or even hundreds of trades. Everything still happen off-chain and instant confirmation. No gas fees, no transaction fees required. And users still retain the custody of their fund, right? Once they're happy with the trade, they can just close the trading channel and settle it on-chain. So this is the property given by Lightning Network. I think it's very popular in Bitcoin. And we adopt it for Optimex, but for the trading use case. So with this, basically the experience is exactly the same like centralized chains, right? Like you basically deposit to the vault, and from there you can just trade back and forth multiple times. Anytime you want to finish the transaction, finish the trading, you can just withdraw it back to your wallet, and that's it. And without any gas fees, without any transaction fees. So we already talked about the vault. Who are the settlement committees? They basically are the decentralized set of nodes that basically just watch for the blockchain event and to help settle the trade for the users. They will need to provide some sort of security deposit. So in case they didn't do the in case they do anything wrong, then we can just slash them on chain, right? And I think the proof to do slashing is quite standard. You basically just submit some proof that some transaction didn't happen on Bitcoin or Ethereum, and that can be done natively on chain, right? So we have been building this in the last 6-7 months, and we are ready to launch, I think, by the end of this month, the public beta. We have a few market makers that are onboarded with us to provide liquidity. Most of them have been around and do a lot of market making on existing DEX and DEX aggregators. Just a few comparison with some of the other existing competitors, or not really competitors, but existing protocols. Wait, let me see. With that, I think, I think we have some more thing. Basically, we have the lending flow, right? So we have been working with Morpho to basically allow people to, collateralize their Bitcoin on Optimex, and basically after that, they can take a loan out of Morpho vault, right? Be it USDT, USDC, or ETH, right? And basically, everything happened on chain. And once the liquidation happens, Optimex or the settlement committee will make sure that we can liquidate the users' BTC in the vault, right? And pay back the stablecoin back to the Morpho vault, and basically to repay the debt. And basically, user can just borrow stablecoin ETH with instant liquidity from the existing Morpho vault. We are quite excited about this. I think this is the first non-custodial lending solution for BTC with instant liquidity. It's going to take us a few months to do this. Hopefully, we can launch it by the third quarter of this year. With that, I think I want to conclude my talk, and Can I take a few questions or? I think I still have a few minutes. Yeah, if you have any question, I'm happy to take them. Otherwise, I think I can just conclude the talk early. Thank you.